Is there a world where Naz Reid could end up getting traded to the Orlando Magic? Today we're going to talk about a mock trade that was just proposed the other day and discuss whether or not it is actually possible that the sixth man of the year could move to the Eastern Conference. But first, before we get into that and everything else, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel as you are watching this video. 90.6% of you guys who are watching our videos aren't subscribed, so join the Magic Digest family, join the 9.4%. We're trying to build an Orlando Magic basketball community here on YouTube, and subscribing is the best and easiest way to support the channel. Now let's get into the initial article. This is written by Stephen R. Henderson of the Orlando Magic Daily. He is a regular contributor. He mentions that the organization should look no further than Minnesota Timberwolves reserve Naz Reid, as he would be the best option that could potentially be available to making this team a true contender and would actually kind of change the trajectory of the franchise. He says Reid is currently dead smack in the middle of a 3-year contract that has him playing through this season and next season. The Magic would have to make an offer to the Timberwolves that they just simply could not refuse in order to snag the 3-and-D reserve. That offer would have to include a player that the Magic fans probably wouldn't want to see leave the team. Now, I did mention this article the other day. That list includes Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, and Jet Howard. Now, he also mentions, but you have to give up something to get a player like Naz Reid, and the Magic could offer a couple of picks and players that also include Wendell Carter Jr., Cole Anthony, and Mo Wagner to entice them into moving off of him. Those three combined with a pick should get the deal done. Now, I don't know if those specific three players are going to be enough for the Timberwolves to say yes to that sort of trade, but I think it's very interesting none of the less. Now, before we get into the rest of that article, what kind of package could the Magic put together truly to get Naz Reid, and whether or not the Timberwolves would ever even be interested in doing this? Let's continue on into the introduction of who Naz Reid is. So if you've been living under a rock, he's the sixth man of the year, and he supported Karl-Anthony Towns through the entire last bit of the postseason there that we saw. After he kind of has his classic Karl-Anthony Towns moments in the postseason, Naz Reid ended up getting a bulk of the minutes, especially late in the games in the Denver series where you were able to see Naz Reid really kind of shine. During this year, he averaged 13.5 points per game, 5 boards, and it was really his shooting splits that were extremely impressive, and of course his age and the money that he is on right now. It is certainly a team-friendly deal and something that the Orlando Magic could afford, and just about every team in the NBA could afford his services. He's a former undrafted player and certainly going to probably, if he continues to keep this up over the next 2 years, get paid a lot more money than he's currently at right now. I believe he's on a 3-year, $42 million deal. So, okay. What kind of package could the Magic put together to end up getting Naz Reid? Now, I think that this is a really interesting point because Steven obviously mentioned in the article that Mo Wagner could be something that the Orlando Magic give up to go get him. Well, right now, Mo Wagner cannot be traded because he was just re-signed, so it would probably be during the season if they were to include a package that had Mo Wagner. Now, would you ever even want to trade Mo Wagner, especially having Franz now inked for 5 more years plus this one upcoming? Probably not, and I wouldn't want to see Mo Wagner go either. I think that's a glue guy, that's a goon out there, kind of, bumping elbows or throwing bows and stuff like that. So I'm cool with not giving him up, but that would probably be a prerequisite to the rest of this conversation because if you were to include him, it'd have to be during the season. And I must say, I don't think that if this deal were to be possible or to get done, that this would happen in this offseason before the season started. I think the Timberwolves are very content with going to continue to run it back, and I think the Orlando Magic re-signed just about everybody or restructured their deal or gave them a max extension. So they can't really trade a ton of players right now in the offseason as is. This would be something that would happen maybe at the deadline or something further back, but something that I really do think is possible with what the Magic have. So with that being said, we can take a look at their entire roster. Now, I've mentioned a lot about Wendell Carter Jr. getting traded. I definitely think that this is a player that you need to include in a deal like this to get Naz Reid, because he's a guy who's very much a win-now player, kind of the same age, and kind of in the same ballpark of player type. Now, not perfectly, definitely less reliable than Naz Reid, but it's kind of a soft replacement that they could get back if they were to try to get more players off of the Orlando Magic that didn't exactly fit their specific timeline. Now, who else could they end up getting? I think if you're the Magic, you really try to make sure that they don't go after Cole Anthony, and you could keep Cole Anthony, because if you make this sort of deal and you can keep Anthony, you have Suggs. Obviously, he's not even, going to be in the realm of possibility, as well as Banchero, Franz, and Mo Wagner, maybe. Those guys that you're keeping, I think you have a pretty good core that you're keeping and keeping out of negotiations with this sort of deal. And then you give them a young guy, and then you do give them picks. So I would say out of Anthony Black, Jett Howard, maybe you give both. But I would say maybe one of those guys, and then you try to really also hold on to Tristan Silva, because I think from a basketball perspective, we've seen more from him already, especially in the Summer League, that is promising more than we have seen from Anthony Black and Jett Howard. Just as of right now, I would say Tristan Silva is the number one guy that you don't want to give up out of those guys, and he's probably going to end up having the most impact in this upcoming season. So probably try to really keep him, and then if they say, hey, we want to get younger, we want to see what those guys can do, maybe they end up having a better spot off the bench on our team than they do on yours, then that's kind of what would happen. Now, I don't know if they would want to take a deal that didn't include Cole Anthony and Wendell Carter Jr., and that's absolutely respectable. So now we have to get into the second part of this trade, and that includes the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, would the Timberwolves ever even decide to do this trade? Well, I think it's also important to reiterate how much Naz Reid supported Karl Anthony Towns in the playoffs. He was there when Cat was having his bad nights, his nights where he is almost unplayable. He's either in foul trouble or needs more wine after the game to decompress. Okay, when Karl Anthony Towns was not able to show up in the series against Denver, and obviously the Dallas series kind of went, haywire pretty quickly. But in that series, it was Naz Reid who came in and was playing big time minutes. So that needs to be noted, because the Timberwolves definitely, and why wouldn't you, value Naz Reid to the 9. Like, there is no possible way that they would really, really want to give away Naz Reid if it wasn't for guys that were probably just as reliable as he is, because they're dealing with a guy who's not reliable. Now, that's the first part. I also want to just continue to mention about Cat. I challenge everybody to look on Twitter, Naz Reid trade, because when you continue to do that, you're going to start to realize, and Timberwolves fans, if you've stumbled upon this video, please correct me, there is a subset of people who do want to trade Karl Anthony Towns and probably would rather see his contract go and off the books and Naz Reid enter that starter role than not. And I'm very surprised by this, but I would also say that I think it also becomes pretty apparent that Karl Anthony Towns' trade value is pretty low as well, because there is a deal floated around that Karl Anthony Towns could get traded to the Knicks for Julius Randle and a couple of other guys, and a lot of Knicks fans said no. And I think that's pretty telling, because you would think straight up Julius Randle is so not anywhere as good. He's got his own issues in the playoffs as Karl Anthony Towns, so why wouldn't you want to make that deal? Well, I just think there's multiple facets to it, and obviously the Timberwolves timeline is kind of getting all over the place. You want to bring in those young guys to continue to be youthful, but at the same time you're paying Gobert an outrageous amount of money. Edwards going to earn so much more money than you could even fathom, and then obviously Karl Anthony Towns is getting paid a lot of money. So could they even afford a guy like Naz Reid in the coming years, or anybody that you could potentially trade that would be worth anything of value? Maybe it just depends. I don't know. The salary cap would have to get worked out here in this sort of scenario. But they were very lucky that they signed Naz Reid to an extension prior to the Sixth Man of the Year candidacy. And I know that Timberwolves fans really wanted to keep him. So with Karl Anthony Towns' trade value being down, potentially fans even of the Timberwolves wanting Naz Reid to continue to enter more of a role on the team, I don't know if the Timberwolves would ever do this, especially with a team like the Magic that might really try to hold on to guys like Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs. They really want to hold close to some of those younger guards that the Timberwolves might actually be interested in. Now, I did also want to mention, before we get out of here, just a short history of the Sixth Man of the Year recipients getting traded, because it is very possible, and I know it's something that a lot of people might say, hey, look, why would the Timberwolves even trade Naz Reid? And I'm almost on the same boat as you. Like, I don't really see anything unless we're in a different situation a year from now or at the trade deadline, but there is a history of Sixth Man of the Year candidates bouncing around and getting traded after they've won, right after they've won, actually. Malcolm Brogdon got traded last offseason right after he won Sixth Man of the Year. James Harden got traded in the offseason right after he won Sixth Man of the Year. These teams are under different circumstances. Of course, you don't want to trade away a Sixth Man of the Year, but they had to. And they decided to do it, and they got some value back for it. Now, we also saw Jamahl Crawford, Lou Williams over the last 10 years. Lou Williams won with two teams. They end up bouncing around a little bit too. And obviously Jamahl Crawford won with multiple teams as well. So you don't really see all that often when you actually look at the list. Guys stay with the one team for a long time. Obviously, you got famous ones like Manu, but you got other rare ones like Jordan Clarkson, who stayed with the Jazz for the last 6 or so years. But more often than not, you see them kind of bouncing around. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're an Orlando Magic fan, was there anything or any package that I mentioned today that you would actually decide to pull the trigger on to try to go get Naz Reid? And if you're a Timberwolves fan, and like I said, if you've stumbled upon the video, correct us if we're wrong. Is this something that would never happen? Please let us know and just try to iron out some of the details and the angles of this trade for us. Now, shout out the Wagner Bros. They play Brazil tonight. Germany does. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time with some more Orlando Magic basketball news.